Konnichiwa friends, I am Sekai X Arts and Animation, and today I'm going to be drawing my original character Cadence Donovan for my story Stella Arcana. This is my first video, so I can imagine it's going to be kind of a crazy ride, but hopefully one day, when I'm more experienced, I can look back on this and laugh a little bit. In terms of the process, I was experimenting a lot with my style while drawing this. A few years ago, I got a how to draw anime drawing book, and ever since have been drawing in pretty much exclusively anime. Here are some examples of stuff I drew back then when I was probably 11. These are pretty old and kind of hurt me to look at, but we can compare it to some stuff I drew more recently. I'm 17 now, and as you can see, I have improved my technique a lot, but I've been feeling lately that it doesn't look that unique. In 6 years, my style still just looks anime, so I've been trying to remedy that. I sketched in her body and facial features, trying to give her a more realistic nose and mouth, which is different from my usual style. I really wanted my new style to have super detailed hair, so I tried turning my inking brush's opacity down to about 50% and really messily sketching in the general shape of the hair. I did this because messy sketches really help capture the natural chaos and layers of hair. I still kept the line art really thin. I'm using Procreate, and my favorite brush that I use all the time is the default syrup brush. I used this to outline everything except for the eyes, where I used the brown brush so it would have some varying opacity within itself. For the eye, I airbrushed in a base color, which I borrowed from a different drawing I did of Cadence, where she's a little bit younger, which I have off to the side here. I then round brushed in the shadows on the top half of her eye and around the edges, and then went over that again with a darker, more saturated color. I inked in some details and highlights and fun colored splotches. I think her eyes ended up being maybe a little bit too sparkly. I toned them down later, and I think they look a lot better. While I continue to do this, I'll briefly describe the story of Stella Arcana. It is set in our world, but is focused on a hidden community of people called hybrids. Hybrids are humans who have been given the gift of a solid soul, which allows them to perform all sorts of miraculous feats. The story centers around Atlas Lasham, his friends, and sometimes even his enemies. Atlas is a young hybrid learning to use his abilities at Stella Arcana Academic Archipelago. While hybrids are sworn to use their magic to protect, people often go corrupt when they have immense power at their disposal. Follow Atlas as he faces all sorts of trials and mysteries while trying to defeat an endless cycle of evil. From hunting down cursed objects, to deciphering cryptic visions and prophecies, to creating catalysts of legend, to trying to kill an immortal, you'll find that people face many obstacles in a world where nearly anything is possible. So that was my little story pitch. It's still in the baby phases right now though. Anyways, this character is one of the main 7/8, and her name is Cadence Donovan. Her family runs an apothecary, so she's very knowledgeable about healing magic. Her father was regarded as somewhat of a genius, and that's who she looks up to and wants to be like. As a result, she's very book smart and logical, but is also very proud of her academic achievement and gets frustrated when she finds people who are better at something than she is. That's about all I can say and remain spoiler-free. I really love this story and all of its characters. I've barely started writing the main series and have already started outlining a bunch of prequels in my head, and I just need more time to dedicate to this stuff. My brain's getting full. But anyways, back to the drawing. After putting down the base colors, I start to render the skin. A lot of the times the drawings that I do are character designs for stories I have, so the light source and nice rendering aren't that important because the illustration's purpose is just to give the basics of what the character is supposed to look like out of my head and onto paper. But here, the main focus was to solidify what I wanted my style to be a bit better in my head, so I actually tried to decide a light source and go from there, adding shadows and highlights where it made sense and where I thought it looked good. I also colored the line art with a slightly darker color than the base color, just to soften it up a bit. And now we move on to the hair. The hair was kind of a nightmare, but I was fairly happy with how it turned out. It didn't help that Cadence has two colored hair and therefore I had to do everything twice. But anyway, I really adore the game Love Nikki and its art style, which was actually the reference I used for the eyes and had up in the top right corner for a while. I really wanted my style's hair to look kind of like that, and I mean, if you Google Love Nikki hair, you'll see why I love it so much. It's beautiful. So after applying the base color here, I airbrushed in dark and light tones in key places. On the bottom of the hair, the part line, and places where the hair curved in is where I put the shadows, and the places where the hair bumped out is where I put the lights. Next was the worst part, the hair stripes. I tried to copy Love Nikki's style a bunch, so I've experimented a lot, and I think what I did right here has so far yielded the best results. I used to meticulously draw in hundreds of thin line art lines, and it looked like this. I think it looks okay, but not for the amount of time and effort it took. I spent an hour and a half drawing the lines in that girl's hair. Here I did something similar, but better. I upped the size of my syrup brush and began drawing in lines as a strange sort of shading. I'm not really sure how I decided what line should go where, which one should end, and which one should branch off from each other. It kinda just happened. If you want a tutorial on that, let me know and I'll try to figure it out. But anyways, after painting in all the lines, I did that same airbrush shading that I did on the entirety of the hair on those little stripes. I then masked out the lines a bit where I thought the light would hit them, and then added a few more of these hair stripes in key places, or places I thought that needed a little bit of extra shadow based on the light logic. I repeat this on the other side. Taking a break from the hair, let's talk about clothes. I kinda just cell shaded it and then blurred it a bit, making sure to blur it more the farther away it was from the thing casting the shadow on it. I then drew in some random wrinkles, and they don't really make sense as I don't think the clothes would wrinkle in that way based on how she's wearing them, but they're there now and it's fine. I'm still learning how to draw folds personally, so please forgive me. Returning to the hair now. Here, I eyedroppered the hairline art and chose a slightly darker, more saturated color. With all the current shading, some of the shape of the hair and its inner workings were getting lost, so I took this color and went over the line art in places I felt were getting especially lost, and also adding in a few flyaway strands to break up the harsh silhouette of the hair. Then, on the base color layer of the hair, I masked out the very tips of the hair. Right here, I'm going over the shadows with a darker, more saturated color to try to make them feel like they have depth. I kept going back to the hair because I just wasn't quite satisfied with it, but I promise this is the last hair step. Finally, I eyedroppered one of the hair stripes, set that layer to multiply, and then shaded the bottom half of that hair, and set that layer to a low opacity, just trying to add in that final layer of shadow. Finally, I messily sketched in a background and blurred it, and I think it looks like a semi-acceptable stone wall. And then I also cheated a bit for the lighting. I copy and pasted everything so that the whole drawing was on one layer. I have a really bad habit of making sure that everything is on its own layer, so I always end up with way too many. Anyways, after making this copy where everything is on one layer, I added a multiply layer on top of that, filled it with a dark gray purple, and set it to a super low opacity and erased and blurred where the light would hit. I then added an add layer on top of this with an orange gold color and blurred where the light would hit, and boom, semi-acceptable lighting. It would have looked better if I had done real lighting, but I think it looks alright. Oh, I also fixed her lips because looking back at my original design, her lips are more rounded on top. After hours of hard work, here's the final result. I was fairly happy with how it turned out. Obviously, it's not perfect and I can always improve, but the main goal was to experiment with my style and move away from just basic anime, and I think I accomplished that. It does still look anime, but that's fine with me. I do still love the style. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Please consider liking and subscribing, and let me know if you have any videos you'd like me to make in the future.